We are broadcasting live from the Woodlands, Texas to the world. You're listening to the only multimedia FM station in Houston, Texas. Your Fusion Radio. Top 40s, dance, Latin, country, pop, rock and roll. All in one station. Mixing genres and generations. You're listening to KNLY, New Waverly, Texas. 91.1 FM, The Boss.
Welcome back to the special feature of the 365 Driven podcast. I'm your host, Tony Watley, and I'm sitting here with Frank Mulcahy, and he's the Director of Business Development for Workplace Bullying Institute. Frank, workplace bullying, that's a huge topic. There's so many of these things going on. Man, I can't understand how much this is costing us in legal cost alone, but it's an important topic, so let's get into that. Welcome to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today, and specifically to talk about this subject because it is so damaging to individuals and corporations at the same time.
I often say things that if you were not a bully, then you typically may have been bullied at some point. So I want to ask you the difference. What's the difference between workplace bullying in children versus in the corporate level?
Well, that's a great question, and I think the general population, Tony, they accept the fact that bullying in the classroom exists and has always existed since the beginning of time. Yeah. I got bullied as a kid. My older brother looked like me, said things. I took the blame. One day I get approached by the McCaffrey brothers. I remember it today, 50-plus years later, going down Lowell Street in Arlington, Massachusetts, and a river on one side and a railroad track on the other. And I had to go to school this way, and two of them held me, one beat me up. And I went to my hockey practice that afternoon, and the coach said, "Mulcahy, what happened?" I said, "Well, I got beat up." And he said, "Well, you need to face it." I said, "Coach, there's three of them." He said, "Well, get them one at a time." Now, we can't tell kids to do that today. No. But that was the rite of passage, and that's what a lot of people think is, well, you stand your ground. But the difference is that most children don't know how to stand their ground. Most adults don't know how to stand their ground. I got one of the kids a week later, beat him up. 2 weeks later, I got his brother. 3 months later, Tony, all four of us are best friends on the baseball team.
There you go.
Now, how did that happen?
Yeah, respect.
It was respect. They knew that I stood my ground. But here's the problem. The bullying is not being stopped in the schools, and therefore, they're growing up with this behavior. They come into the workplace, practice bullies, but then, Tony, they watch reality TV. They watch Survivor and Big Brother and The House. And my question to you is, who wins the cash prize at the end?
Yeah, the meanest person or the most strategic person.
They want their 15 minutes of fame. And the problem is that HR and business owners have to deal with this behavior because now the average employee thinks that this is acceptable. This is the norm. It's not acceptable because the damages are staggering.
So why do you think that it exists in the workplace at all?
It exists in the workplace because there's a lack of laws, okay? And when I say there's a lack of laws, we have sexual harassment laws and we have hostile work environment laws and discrimination laws, but there's only 5 states that have workplace bullying laws, California being the most progressive. New Hampshire passed a law and the governor vetoed it. She didn't think it was good for businesses. It's excellent for businesses because if a business can promote collaboration, cooperation, communication, they can increase profits, they can increase proficiency, and they can have a happy workplace. So it's not restrictive upon companies, it's actually helpful for the companies to be able to do it. So in the absence of laws, what we try to do at the Workplace Bullying Institute is we try to help our HR department how to rewrite their employee manual to put acceptable, non-acceptable behavior and consequences for violating it. And that way we can help because the physical and the emotional and the impact is staggering.
So for somebody listening right now, how would they identify workplace bullying if it's happening to them?
So the definition that we use at the Workplace Bullying Institute is that workplace bullying is the health-harming, repeated mistreatment of an individual by certain methods. And it could be alienation, it could be withholding of resources, not giving them the ability to have all the tools, not giving them the time off they need for medical. But it's when it's individualized. It's not system-wide. You see, it's when it's a particular individual, and here's the problem. It hides itself in shame and secrecy on a corporate and an individual level. Now, what I mean by that is that our studies show, and I did a study right here in Houston with Gail Fallon. She was the president of the Houston Federation of Teachers.
Yeah.
They had a major problem a few years ago, and Gail sent out a questionnaire to all the teachers, and 65% of them responded, said, there is bullying going on within the district. So then she asked, did you report it? And only 15% reported it. Now that's amazing. 65% saw it, but 15% reported it. And here's why. 50% said they didn't think anything would be done. 40% said they didn't want to be able to go out there and be associated with it for fear of retaliation.
That's right.
Right? And then 33% said, I can't report this because I'm reporting it to the boss who probably could have been the bully.
Yeah.
But here's the staggering statistic. 95% of them said they wish there were rules and regulations against that kind of behavior, because when we talk about the health harming impact, it is staggering what's happening to the people.
Yeah, I think I've also experienced workplace bullying, and the way I found it was the passive aggressiveness from supervisors who, like you said, they're not just jerks to the entire team, they're jerks to certain individuals, and they do things to really hurt your career. I find that the people that are in supervisor roles that are threatened by maybe your trajectory and your climb through the organization, those tend to be the ones that have that insecurity and kind of lash out and try to stunt your growth. Have you seen evidence of that?
Absolutely. As I deal with, particularly, I'm very intimate with the Society of Human Resource Managers conferences around the world now, talking about workplace bullying, because we bring an international perspective, and especially with Houston, we're an international city. So companies have to deal with different cultures, different norms, different habits, but what we find is that the average person that is bullied is usually the most competent, usually the most liked, very disciplined. These are the ones that they know what they should do. They want to come in early. They want to stay late. They want to help their coworkers. But they're also the prime target for the bully, the person that's insecure about their position in the corporate ladder. And therefore, your best and your brightest are the ones that usually become a victim. Now, what I just described is also the ideal candidate that HR wants to go out and recruit. So it's counterproductive. HR and recruiters are out there getting the best and the brightest, and then the insecure people are trying to tear them down. You know, oh, you're working too much, you're making us look bad, you're doing more than the quota.
Oh man, I've heard these things.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really harmful when we see that it's people in our family that it happens to, and we've all experienced it, and it's time to draw a line in the sand. You know, and it can happen to athletes, it can happen to the military. You know, we haven't talked about the laws, but you know, I was in the United States Army as a military policeman, and so I'm very familiar with the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's our justice system in the military, and they 2 years ago said that this disruptive workplace bullying is a court-martialable offense.
Wow.
Right? So the military says it can't be existing.
You could end up in the brig for this.
Right. You could end up in, I could have been the MP to come and put you in the brig, right? The Adjutant General to put you in.
I take it serious.
Yeah, but did you hear about the NFL?
No.
Okay. So about 4 years ago, it was the Miami Dolphins had a very bad case of workplace bullying. It involved Jonathan Martin, great lineman, and he went to private academy, went to Stanford University, 6'5", 325 pounds, not a weak stick, made his living protecting a quarterback against 11 other angry men.
Yeah.
Well, one of his teammates, Richie Incognito, who was a bully, he got thrown out of high school, he got thrown out of Nebraska, and he just had this kangaroo court, and he had a notebook, and he just was bullying Jonathan to the point. It's so sad. We actually have the NFL commissioned by Roger Goodell, because my boss, Dr. Gary Namey, the most respected expert in this field, was the professional witness for workplace bullying. And Jonathan actually got to the point that he had suicidal ideation on 2 occasions. He left the team. Folks, he walked away from a $1.8 million career in the NFL. Walked away because he couldn't take the constant taunting and insults. Last year, after Parkland, this is so sad, Jonathan was arrested. Routine traffic stop, got pulled over, and in his car he had a shotgun, a knife, and an axe. And on the shotgun he had Miami Dolphins, he had the private academy on the name of his Harvard Westlake private academy, and he had the names of Michael Pouncey, Jeff Jerry, and Richie Incognito. And he said, when you've been bullied and you're a coward, your options are suicide or revenge.
Wow.
The turmoil that, and again, I say, folks, if we understand, Jonathan, everything in the world going for him, Hartford, his mom and dad, Harvard-educated attorneys, Jonathan, Stanford, graduate, NFL career.
Man, he had to have a tough mindset just to make it to the NFL, and it was able to destroy that just by the bullying of his teammates.
Absolutely. Now, in comparison, what about the secretary? What about the nurse? What about the patrolman? What about the factory worker? What about the hard-working people that are out there doing menial jobs in fast food and home services? If this is happening to an NFL lineman, what's happening to the rest of the workplace? So I encourage businesses to take it upon themselves to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to addressing the situation that we call workplace bullying, because it hides itself in shame and secrecy.
So you mentioned there's laws out there. Give us an example of some of these.
So in the particular laws, of course, we have the discrimination laws, and every HR department knows about that. And it's age and race and gender and, political, and now it's handicap and alternative lifestyles. And we all know that, and this is where the EEOC comes in and, workforce commissions. But then what we had, and Dr. Namey and David Yamada, professor from Suffolk Law, is so instrumental in helping states to draft legislation. That's what we do at the Workplace Bullying Institute. We try to give the legislators the terminology to get these bills passed, to have respect in the workplace. Because again, for business owners that are listening to us, it helps to increase your profitability, your proficiency, decrease your risk and the lawsuits. It increases shareholder value. So it's just the right thing to do. But when I say it hides itself in shame and secrecy, a company doesn't want to admit it because they don't want the public to know they got a bullying problem. So they try they try to hide it, and they try to, okay, HR, you go fix it. But the individual doesn't come forward because, like we talked about the study from the Houston Federation of Teachers, Gail Fallon, the public doesn't want to come forward because they don't think anybody will believe them. Okay, so with the laws, it's hard with all the political discourse and the chaos we have in society today. It's just unacceptable and unruly because it's damaging to everybody. But the laws, Texas does not have a law. 26 states have proposed legislation. Utah does it for state employees. Tennessee does it for state employees. Nevada does it only for teachers. But California says that any company with 5 or more employees on an annual basis has to have workplace bullying, respect in the workplace training in conjunction with sexual harassment.
So they're breaking it out specifically, but combining them to 2 key topics.
Yes. So what I do is I offer to companies free consultation to come in and do a workshop for the executive team to talk about the situation, talk about what it does to clients, talk about what it's doing to the corporation, and give them guidance and suggestions how they can be proactive rather than reactive, how they can actually go in and they can start to establish a culture of civility again. Where it's the respectable, because when the employees know that the corporation cares, they will come forward. They will come forward. I was with one of my clients in Louisiana last month, and we did these kind of workshops. They're about an hour and a half, and it was amazing because we did one at 9 and one at 10:30, and then at the lunch break, this gal came in She said, can I talk to you, to the HR director? Yeah, what do you got? She said, this has been bothering me for 3 years.
Wow.
And she was being bullied, Tony, by a vendor.
What? External bullying?
An external into the internal. And she didn't think that she could come forward and talk to the corporation because she thought the corporation would back the vendor.
And the vendor reported to them.
Right.
That is amazing.
Isn't it crazy?
That. So there's a lot of people that, like, what you've talked about is the culture of these corporations and being established to do that. I think there's a lot of breakdowns because a lot of times we hear these corporations have all this talk about zero tolerance and they do these things, but if they don't take the actions to enforce that, then the employees and the bullies especially run rampant and they just keep doing what they're doing. So is there anything that the corporations can do to try to curb this?
Yeah, they have to let the rank and file, I call it from the boardroom to the storeroom, know that it's no longer acceptable. And to know that if you have a situation going on within your workspace, please report it to your superior. And if for any reason you feel that the superior is the problem, then you go right to HR. And when you do that, you know, it's kind of like I go into a corporation and they got this beautiful mission statement in the front foyer with the beautiful wooden frame. Well, the employees look at it and they say, nice frame.
Checkbox,
but the words about how employee engagement and how we love the employee and we respect, it's empty, it's hollow. And the corporations end up finding out because, as we said, they watch TV, the perpetrator on TV gets the cash prize, so it must work in my workplace.
Well, it's not just to the workplace. Most people here in the United States, we're working on an average 8 to 9 hours a day. But these consequences affect your health, don't they? They leave after the work hours.
They do, and I'd like to address that. There's physical and there's psychological impact. The physical can be fibromyalgia, migraines, headaches, but the psychological, we find that 59% have panic attacks. We find that 30% have PTSD symptoms.
It's terrible.
Now, that's a war wound. When we talk about PTSD, we think about the military. And yet, we find that 69% feel it's derogatory towards the corporation. So when we know that the employee is our most valuable asset, folks, let's go out there together and try to develop a culture of civility. You know, if I can help, you can reach me. I'm in Houston, Texas. You just go to the web and you look up Frank Mulcahy workplace bullying, and the services are complimentary. You know, and I do it for many of the largest corporations we know locally and internationally. And I think together we can help to make a safer workspace and a more productive workspace. And the bullies, they no longer feel welcome, so they voluntarily leave.
Man, Frank, it's been an incredible interview. Thank you for helping us get rid of these bullies from our workplace. It's been an awesome show. Thank you.
I appreciate the time for being here today. Thank you.
We are broadcasting live from the Woodlands, Texas to the world. You're listening to the only multimedia FM station in Houston, Texas. Your Fusion Radio. Top 40s, dance, Latin, country, pop, rock and roll. All in one station, mixing genres and generations. You're listening to KNLY, New Waverly, Texas, 91.1 FM, The Boss.